Okay, so it is 6:33. We're going to call the meeting of August 17th, 2020 to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag and to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with life, liberty, and justice for all.
Okay, so agenda item number 2, warrants. We've got Stanley with the general.
We're gonna make an amendment to the
We are.
meeting.
We need
Okay,
to
we're gonna
add,
amend the agenda.
yes, we need to add an emergency wastewater allocation request,
Make a motion,
please.
we add an emergency wastewater allocation request to the agenda
As agenda item 2.
as agenda item 2.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Sorry about that. So
Okay.
emergency wastewater allocation, agenda item 2. Carrie?
All right, yeah. I was thinking it was agenda item 7, so I wasn't exactly ready, but let's see, we'll get to it. It is for Valerie Shagnon. She has a failed septic system. The application's in the packet. She would like to get onto municipal wastewater. Seems pretty straightforward.
I'm still at a place where I find it antiquated that people have to come to us to make a request to get an allocation. The city doesn't require the council to approve every. It just seems like the manager should be able to do that on our behalf. I get the mechanism of wanting us to have some sort of a paper trail on that, but I think the manager ought to be authorized to do that. If my septic failed tomorrow and I had a city sewer line in front of my place and I had to come to the select board for approval first, and they didn't meet for 13 days, I'd be livid. I mean,
Well, I mean, if it had been a long time, we could have had an emergency meeting.
well, the fact that would have to happen for somebody to be able to tap a line that's already in the ground.
True. I mean, if
You
you
know?
want to, we can look at that policy. We can-
I would like to, I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I'd love Carrie to be able, or even the zoning administrator, to just be able to sign, we don't charge a fee. We're doing it to document it basically, so we know who's hooked up to what. And it really this whole policy is bred really out of the culture of lawsuits and not communicating with the actual service provider. So maybe we can email the city and ask them to just copy us automatically on every allocation request, not ask that people contact us, period. I mean,
Actually, it came when the town thought they were gonna have allocations. And so we needed to control the allocation. It was before my time.
Yeah.
But it wasn't due to the lawsuit, it was before the lawsuit. And yeah, I agree. We should not have to follow it.
Right.
We don't control any.
I think we should be in the process, though. I mean, copying us, having that part of the process, I think is important.
Sure. If I was in that position, I would not be very thrilled with that procedure. And it's such an easy change. But anyway, so we need a motion to, no, we don't. We don't need it.
I don't think you do.
It's just a notification.
Right. It's a policy change if you're all in consensus. We
Yeah.
can agree on that, but.
Okay.
Meanwhile, there's one more agenda with a wastewater allocation, but we'll get to that after.
Yeah.
So there's consensus to approve this emergency wastewater allocation.
Yeah.
And going forward, we're gonna change the protocol.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you can decide if it's you or the zoning administrator or the clerk's office or whoever's best to do that. But it's whatever you decide is best practice is good with me. I just don't want people to have to talk to us. Okay, so new agenda item number 3, warrants. Stanley?
All right, I have the general warrants dated 8/4 to 8/17/20. The amount of money is $277,785.02. 130 invoices. 27 invoices were for tax overpayment that totaled $10,122. Hand care, one invoice, $12,391. Blue Cross Blue Shield, $16,746. Local, regional, and state organizations where we donate money every year, with 15 invoices, total $43,600. In Albans Library, $152,622. Clarence Brown had 9 invoices for $2,138. This next one, I needed some help, and I called Carrie this morning, and she was more than generous with her help. There was 3 invoices, but they had no money attached in the account. So Carrie took care of that. We got it straightened out, and so we're good there.
And we're good there because it's a grant.
One was a grant, and the other,
Yeah, I didn't want it to sound like we were good that we didn't have any money in there.
we got money.
So we're gonna get revenue, it just comes in on another side.
We lose it on the expense side,
Yeah.
getting some back on the revenue
Correct,
side.
yep.
With something to check.
Yep.
So that's 92% of the total money spent right there. So everything else looked golden. So I would make a motion that we approve the general warrant dated 8/4 to 8/17 in the amount of $277,785.02.
Second.
Okay, any questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
I have the payroll warrants. So the first one's August 14th, 2020 for $21,952.50. And the second is August 7th, 2020 for $23,198.84. So I'll make a motion that we approve these 2 payroll warrants.
Second.
Okay, any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You mind if we say aye?
Oh, aye.
Thank you. I don't have Aaron to back up your quiet voice, Jonathan. I need you to say it, or I'll have to start voting for you. You have a couple warrants?
Yeah, I have 2 warrants here. One is the infrastructure development warrant in the amount of $21,526.40. That consists of 6 invoices, Ascent Consulting, Cross Consulting, Messenger, and Department of Public Safety. That's for the salt shed, and 2 other invoices from Ascent Consulting for the town hall. So I'll make a motion. Do we do them both?
No, you do one
Separate
separately.
motion?
They're from different accounts.
Okay. So I'll make a motion, we approve the infrastructure development warrant dated August 17th, 2020 in the amount of $21,526.40.
I'll second it.
Hey, Stanley, do you have a point? No. Okay.
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And the other warrant is the industrial park warrant in the amount of $901.17, and that's for the sewage pump, sign lights, and road lights. I make a motion, we approve the industrial park warrant dated August 17th, 2020 in the amount of $901.17.
I'm having a camera problem. Is the system error turn power off? I'm gonna have to give it a rest.
Can people hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so the screen is probably, okay, now we're moving.
You might lose the sound too. I mean, it's
Okay,
not
we're
like,
having a technical difficulty potentially.
if they can see and you're recording,
Yeah,
let me just leave it on and
Yep,
I'll
let's see
call
what
the
happens.
station and see. Let me back
Okay.
up so I just got a good
Okay.
shot here.
Okay.
It's best I can do.
yeah, get the board, you don't.
Okay.
Yeah. I
Thank
can't
you.
get it back any farther because this cord is too short.
That's perfect.
All right.
That's good. All right.
Perfect. Okay, so thank you for bearing with us. We had a motion.
Motion.
Okay, we need a second.
Second and motion.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we've approved all of our warrants for this evening. We're on to agenda item 3, which is minutes. So in front of us, we've got the August 3rd, 2020 from the blister. Does anybody have any revisions? Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Anybody want a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, all right. Public comment, is there anybody here that would like to make a public comment this evening? Okay,
I have one if no one does.
Okay.
Just to let you guys know, on the back of Aldous Hill and Hardack, there's a group building a disc golf course. So it just kind of happened out of one of those forums on Facebook, and they were up there this weekend cutting the holes. And there's a Preston Fuller's his name. He's designed courses before, so he designed it all. And Hardack's on board, Aldous Hill's on board, and the rec department. So it's another exciting thing for our town.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Disc golf. Al, you want to come play around with Jess and I? Yeah. I look like I'm using very much. That's awesome. Thank you, John.
I didn't know.
Is there anybody in particular that we could contact if we wanted to learn more about it?
You can go through me, and I'll put you in touch with Preston.
Awesome.
Jessica, do we know when it'll be complete?
They're moving very quickly. I would think in like a month.
Okay.
Yeah, they already ordered the baskets.
Oh, fine.
Yeah, it should be good.
It'd be fantastic. Okay, so does anybody else have a public comment? Okay, perfect. So agenda item 6 now is the Public Safety Advisory Committee. We've got draft 2. The board just received it tonight. Jessica gave me some written comments just beforehand, and I'd love her to be able to explain all of it to the board. So what we've done differently is on the expectations, page 1, we wanted to add something that basically says that race should be a qualification when selecting somebody to serve, especially at the Public Safety Advisory Committee. Because if we have a board that is specifically one race or another, and then there's an open seat, and there are 2 applicants, and one person may seem qualified for one reason or another, I don't think it should be I think it should be noted and taken into account when somebody might represent a different perspective within the community, whether that person's a person of color or not. So we added, it is also expected that the select board will review race as a qualification when weighing appointments to the committee. It is paramount that persons of color serve on the committee or in another elected or volunteer capacity within the town to ensure that all perspectives are heard and represented within our municipal government. I sat at my computer for probably a half hour trying to figure out how to write those 2 sentences. It's not an easy issue to talk about, but the fact is we've got 5 select board members now that have different perspectives. I'm 23. Jessica's a working mother of 3. Jonathan's a business owner. Dan's a retiree. Erin works for the health department. She's relatively new to the area. But we don't have a single person of color here, and I don't think that it's a negative point in our community, but I think it's worth noting.
Yeah. And we keep hearing, there's so much outrage right now, and everybody, the guidance says, reach out to your local leaders. And I'm like, well, I'm a local leader. Like, what should I be doing? So I did reach out to just several organizations, and we had a great training at the hospital on cultural competency this morning, and I kept the woman for like a half hour afterward, just asking her questions. And so I did change a few things, even in that sentence.
Yeah.
And
I just tried to get something on paper.
yeah, I think it's just important to, like, these conversations are really uncomfortable for people. And I know I'm afraid to say the wrong thing all the time. So I think it's good to just have this on the paper and see what people think. So some of the stuff I added, like at the bottom of that first paragraph, I just wrote, the select board recognizes a long history of marginalization in all communities. So this is an effort to create some reform and fix the power imbalances. and this committee should be a reflection of the population that it serves. So I did take out the part that you worked on, Brendan,
That's fine.
so hard.
That's fine.
But I wrote something, you know, under membership, that an effort should be made to have the composition of the committee reflect the demographics of those in our community who have the most contact with police. And I don't know how to phrase that. I just think it's important that all perspectives are heard and represented in our municipal government. So some of the things, like with the membership, if you look at it, you know, there's a chair, there's a law enforcement retiree, there's a CEO or board member, there's 2 CEO or board members, 2 business owners. Those are all people who are already on some level of power in their positions. So I really want to capture people who are not. The woman I was talking to this morning said, well, first of all, I don't think it has to be a CEO or board member. I think it can just be a member. And maybe one of those nonprofits should be a member representing migrant justice. You know, we have a big population in our community of migrant workers. And I heard a talk last spring where, you know, many of them are afraid even to go to the grocery store because they're afraid someone's going to call the police on them or say that they're here illegally. So how can we get their voice and get a better relationship with the police? Maybe one member should represent the Abenaki Tribal Council, because they've been marginalized in our community for a long time and don't necessarily show up as one race or the other, but you know, we know they have high poor health outcomes, they have high suicide rates, they might be having more interactions with the police. I just want to make sure when we do this that we're getting the voices of people who don't normally show up for our committees. So, and I don't know if it's how hard it'll be to get those members, but I'd like to at least try and see what happens. I don't know what other people think about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This isn't really all that balanced of a list when you look at it. You got somebody that's already an elected select board member. Basically, the only 2 that are open to anybody are the 2 town residents at large, and that's out of 9. So this thing's way out of whack. I mean, we'll call it a spade. It's out of whack. When you look at it from that perspective.
Yeah.
I tried to look at it from a perspective of how do we fill the committee with people who care in an immediate sense and have a knowledge base to be able to make decisions on day one. Maybe that's not what we're after at all. Maybe I
think it just matters what we want out of this committee. I mean, do we want another board? I don't know how to phrase it, but I mean, I want a board where the community feels like they can show up there and have their voice heard and not be uncomfortable speaking the realities that they're living, you know? Yeah. And I don't know, like, to me, this board should be, like, even the first line under expectations, it says, this committee will be tasked with ensuring that any contract for police services is approved by the select board is enforced in full. And I think it should add, and the community's voice is clearly heard. Like, it's not just going to be this board is making sure the police are doing their job, but we're also creating a forum for everybody else.
I mean, so I wrote it. I'm going to go down a couple sentences. To that end, the committee will work to engage area residents, local nonprofits, business owners, and other property owners within the town, i.e. landlords or second homeowners. And it is expected that the committee will ask area partners for feedback on policing services within the town no less than quarterly. So I'm trying to say no less than 4 times a year. This committee's got to have some mechanism of reaching out to the community saying, if you've got a complaint to make, we're holding a meeting on this date, or send your written complaint to this person, or if you'd like to make an appointment to talk to person with so-and-so, this is who you call. And you give people an opportunity, basically an open invitation to come in and share what they've experienced or what they haven't experienced. And that can be anything from, you know, my son's a person of color and he got stopped the other day for something that if his friend who's, you know, not a person of color did, I don't think they would have got stopped. Or it could be something of, there's people speeding on my street and I don't see enough coverage. Like, it can be anything from a minute, regular day-to-day complaint to a big I don't know, that's what I had in there, maybe that needs to be more pronounced.
And then what happens with that information when someone comes to
Well, that's
committee?
it, we've gotta figure that out, that's a good point. Where does it go? I mean, does it immediately go straight to the sheriff's office? Or we should control how that goes to the sheriff's office? Should there be an appointed staff member there with a specific member of the committee to take them? Because it's intimidating to come, if you have a negative experience with law enforcement, it's gotta be intimidating to walk into a room with 9 people
But the,
and a staff member.
but the thing is, they don't have to do that now. I don't wanna make this onerous.
Right.
People that have a problem, they can call me, they can send a letter, they can email, which is often their preference. They don't have to wait for a meeting, and they can share any and all
We
of
just
their
emphasize
concerns.
what we already do.
Well, and I think,
Yes.
Carrie, like, that, to that point,
So we can
there's,
have, no, I'm just
Finish,
gonna say
sorry.
the board can then report to me, and I will forward it to the sheriff or the.
yeah, I'd almost rather than have that like hearing feeling of just
Right.
having an option for people to constantly give feedback and for you to constantly be able to collect comments. So
Right.
it can be like through a form or through however they feel comfortable.
Yep.
Because yeah, I mean, coming in front of these boards and speaking is very nerve wracking, especially if you may or may not have broken the law.
And I've often told people, I have voicemail here, you can call any time of day or night. If you think about it at 10 o'clock, I probably won't answer the phone, but you could definitely leave a message and I'll return your call.
We,
It's timely. Yeah, it can be timely. It doesn't have to be.
how do we look like we're reaching out regularly? Like, what's the, I only put that in there to try to create a mechanism where we would have to, even if everything looked like it was going perfectly, go out of our way to ask if anything's going wrong. Because there's a lot of people who, have a negative interaction, they don't want to talk about it, and that's just the way it is. But if we were out there saying, hey, we want to hear from you right now, maybe it might shake a couple things loose, that's all.
I think there's
I
people that have
also-
good interactions as well.
Well, definitely, and that can be provided too,
Right.
but, we're not trying to form a committee to look at this because we think everything's going perfect.
No, I get
It's- And it's a national discussion, but locally it's affected too.
I just think it needs to be a balanced committee, and maybe that committee is the one that determines the best way for people to communicate. Because if they're already
yeah.
working with those populations or are part of that population, they know how they want to talk to local government.
So
So
some of
maybe
that
we
is-
don't need to put as many stipulations, just let them form and
Yeah.
and let them have say in how it's gonna work.
Well, to an extent, yeah, I mean, I think the policies, the procedures of the board, I don't know, there's certain things that should come here, and there are certain things that should be left to the committee. It's kind of like a federal state issue, like who should have power over who in what instant. Like, should we have the authority to be able to go in and adjust something if it's not working, if the committee members don't want it? Like, I mean, I don't know.
I think it can be a conversation. I think like we have to be okay giving up a little bit of our power and setting this, and it can be, they come up with their plan or their charter or their action plan, and then the same way we do with other policies, that we put our input into it and have a conversation, like, why did you make that decision?
That can be a conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we have to say,
So
you
should we
come up
get
with it and
the,
run with it.
we should get the membership figured out and start a recruitment process then. 'Cause what's the point of debating much more of it other than, we know the purpose is rooted in good faith. And we need to figure out what representation we want. And then everything else is kind of subject, it's up, if we're gonna have a conversation with the committee about it, we'll have that. We need them in their place.
Do you still want 9? I mean, maybe a way to make this more balanced is to eliminate some of those positions of
Go to
CEOs.
7?
Or 7,
Go
whatever.
to 7?
I think, because we have a hard time staffing some of our
Oh,
committees,
yeah.
I want to be realistic about it. If we get too many, that'd be a great problem to have, but maybe you eliminate some of the CEO requirements. But that,
What do you guys think? I mean, we're running what do you think, Jonathan?
I don't know, I guess we gotta see who's interested, because I don't know, unless anything's changed in the past year, I don't imagine people are gonna be knocking down the doors to get on this board. But
Right.
I guess we gotta start somewhere, right?
Yeah.
I would just say, let's see who we can get, and then we can make it up as we go. I don't think we can set anything in concrete right now.
Other than the fact that they should, I mean, one thing that we added here is that the committee members should get the same stipend, which is $25 a meeting as a DRB or planning commission member. I mean, I've always been told to look at it and have looked at it as those stipends are basically babysitter fees, so that people who have children can, I mean, that's literally what I've tried to abolish them a few times on more than one occasion, at least for the select board. But that's a good enough reason to leave it in place. So, everybody beat me up on the stipend debate. I will never bring it back up again. I added stipend to an existing policy. You all won. Dan, what do you think?
I think we're heading in the right direction. We gotta get out of this us against them.
Right.
And one way of doing that is just to have a generic mix of people, I think, and sit down and listen and take some action.
Yeah.
I mean, you may not get it resolved, but at least the person has somebody that's not too. Maybe somebody from the counseling service would be a better person in here. Somebody from one of these drug rehab places. You know, they see the people that come in, the people that get arrested, and they can probably, you know, there's some neighborhood people can tell you what's going on, and you listen to them, and then you can go to the sheriff and say, hey, look, you know.
I want to say that if in the purest form, this committee acts as an advisory council to the sheriff, it's almost good enough. I mean, especially if the sheriff takes it to heart. If there are people who come in with different perspectives and say, we need this, and the sheriff listens, like that's.
It's not to tell the sheriff
Yeah.
he's doing a bad job.
No, it's
or
just to
wrong
provide
job.
feedback.
It's something we can work with to get things fixed.
The more they talk back and forth, the easier it is to start an initiative together that didn't come from a negative point. You know, communication's everything, I guess.
Those two ladies that were in asking for money, you know, when we did our budget, I forget what organization, but they really hit you here in the heart, you know, the things they're doing with young kids.
Restorative justice, right?
And that's where we need to be some of the time.
Yeah, maybe with,
Restorative justice would be great. I mean, I think it can be, you know, we have one select board member, 2 residents, a resident with law enforcement certification or background, 1 member representing migrant justice, a member of a nonprofit specializing in addiction or restorative justice. It could be one or the other.
Yep.
1 business owner instead of 2, and then maybe 1 member of the Abenaki Tribal Council. That's just a proposal, but
Well, somebody from the prison too, you could get,
I mean, there's so many.
see what they deal with, you know, and how they, I know Greg Hale's great when he's here talking with him.
Well, maybe you do.
I mean, I'd be happy to reach out to migrant justice in the Abenaki and just see if they want to be involved in this board. It's, you know, the starting point.
I mean, if we wanted to make room for people, the select board members would probably come on. That would probably be the first one on the chopping block. If we're really all about handing over a certain amount of responsibility and power to the subcommittee, the best thing to do is just to leave it to do its work, I guess. I don't know. And if we go to 1 business owner, we can immediately slide that over into, I think addiction treatment and restorative justice are probably the biggest ones that could have an immediate impact on day 1, providing perspective. But the other 2 communities we're talking about, being the Abenaki and migrant communities, they're here. Maybe you remove the fire department member and the select board member, you know. If one or the other is interested out of the 2, maybe we ask the select board member and leave the fire department member. I think a certain level of communication at a base level between the fire department and the sheriff's office is just always a good thing. However we can facilitate that, we'll all benefit from it. They show up on scenes together. I mean, they might witness things.
I think they already have a good relationship.
Well, yeah, I mean, they don't have to be here, but
Right, it may surprise you, there won't be much call for the fire department problems there. Tie up somebody.
But because our fire department is public safety, it is still a good idea to have the public safety, somebody safety.
Do we want to give this another hard scrub and then start contacting? And Jessica picked 2 groups to contact. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem reaching out to Restorative Justice and maybe the Howard Center. I mean, if the Howard Center's taking over the hospital's treatment programs, that would probably be, they're gonna get an influx, they're gonna have more of an input than ever. So, I'll take that on, and then the rest are fairly, yeah, so why don't we do that? And then we'll try to take this back for our first meeting in September. And I think honestly, about 60% of this is all gonna get axed out of here. If we're gonna have a conversation, I'm gonna shorten this up to who do we see as committee members, keep their stipends in place, so that's an agreement on day 1, they know they can expect it. And then basically everything after that can go. I don't know, maybe keep some elements of the purpose and expectation statements, but definitely not a whole page worth. So that's what, does anybody object to that course of? Does anybody in the public have a comment to make on that? We've been doing a lot of talking, and I'd be more than happy to open it up. Al?
Yes, I sent you 2 emails or 2 chat messages. First, I'm willing to review that as written and maybe make some suggestions on verbiage. I have a concern with the use of the word race versus people of color.
Okay. Well, yeah, why don't I get this cleaned up and then send a polished copy over to you? I mean, we're not happy with it where it is, but.
All right.
Okay. So I'll have this out by the end of the week. We'll get it in everybody's hands. And if anybody has any pressing suggestions, I mean, I'd like to get this. I don't know that it's something that needs to be adopted, but it's not to steal the city's verbiage, but roadmap is what it is essentially. Just where do we go and with who?
If you're gonna start a committee, I think it should involve the select board approval.
And we want a motion to create, I mean, we're gonna have to make a motion to vacate or end the police advisory committee.
Yeah, you can do that all at once, but I still think it should have a motion, especially if you're gonna pay the stipend.
When we do that, we have to take it out of the police contract.
All right, so what can you just briefly go over for Jen and I, what you've agreed on for the membership right now, or is that still up in the air?
I will, we've got it listed out and I've
Okay.
got it in my head and I know Jessica does too, so
All right, I think I do too, but okay.
I'll
we'll
get it
confirm.
cleaned up and I'll send everybody a
All right,
draft
I'll
within a
send
day
you
or
my
two.
notes too.
Yeah, please do. So, I mean, this is not,
Okay, you ready to move on?
I am. Does anybody else have any comments on this before we move on? Okay. Yeah.
I was good. Yeah, I was just going to say something real quick. Add my comments in, if I may.
Yeah.
It seems like 9 is an awful lot of people. I'm thinking 5 to 7 for something like this, and I'm keeping an eye on what Virgins is doing as well as the city. And it seems like they're getting super formal with their advisory committees, so much so that they haven't had really a chance to get started on any work yet. And it's also sort of raising eyebrows around their communities as well. And I kind of agree with what Jonathan had to say, which is, just kind of get this board formed, get it going, and see from there what you guys want to work with and what your overall goal is going to be. But yeah, I don't know. I just think it's getting to the point where it's almost too formal. I can appreciate you're trying to really wordsmith some of this as well. So I can appreciate it from being a member of the community here. But yeah, I like what Jonathan had to say. Look and see who's going to be interested in being in the committee, and then sort of forming it around that. That's all.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, so does anybody have any response to Mike, or we could move on? So agenda item 6 is a resolution for the town to get on the September agenda for the state downtown board for village center designation for the Bay. Pretty straightforward. It's just a resolution in support of an application.
Correct.
So we, I can read it. I don't think it's necessary to read it. I would take a motion to adopt.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I see shaking heads and affirmative.
If somebody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion, we approve the resolution for the village center designation.
Okay.
And sign.
And sign.
Yes.
We got a second. We need a second.
Second.
And then I had a resident reach out to me with a concern about this, and I just want to put a note in the minutes in case we ever need it. This effort isn't to prioritize the Bay over any other area of town. It's to recognize what we already have and to work to make it as good as it can be. It is not to the detriment of either of our growth centers or any other area of town. It's just an effort to be able to open us up for more grant funding is all it is. There's 170 something other village centers in the state, and they're approving a dozen every meeting according to Bruce. So I just wanted that noted. That way, if anybody ever comes up and says my application was somehow affected because of this, we can point to it and say that's not the intent from the get-go. Anyway, so we have a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Perfect. So we will sign this, and hopefully we get on their September agenda and get that approved. Okay, Gary?
Yes, so gonna go to the town manager's report, and the first item on here is, we're gonna talk about our draft stormwater utility. Amanda Ludlow is on, and she had submitted for your review a PowerPoint presentation, so I'm gonna try to share my screen with her. If I can remember how to do it.
Is Ned on too?
Ned is here in the room.
Hi, Ned. Good.
Ned, if you want to come sit up here, please.
Did I do that right though?
I see your desktop.
So can you put your
Here, yeah.
PowerPoint? No, but can you put your PowerPoint up there? Oh, I'm missing. I think I just missed a step. Amanda, can you put the PowerPoint?
Oh, can I share my screen with you? Or do you have the PowerPoint? Would that be easier than?
You make her a host.
Yeah, I
She'd
guess.
just have her share her,
I could share my screen.
yeah, she
Yeah.
shares her screen with us, she can put it up on hers.
Yeah.
And come up on hers. It'll be easier.
So,
forward.
let's see.
You want to go back to full Zoom?
I think you need to, it's disabled participant screen sharing.
Yeah, I'm doing this wrong.
Okay. You want some help?
Yeah, I do.
If you have the PowerPoint that I emailed, you can just show.
I don't.
Amanda, give me 30 seconds.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I guess I need more training. I need some remedial training on Zoom. Because I usually just
By the time we
participate.
master this, we won't.
Well,
Right.
that's also true, but I hit that button.
There's open.
All right.
So where do we?
I know.
Yours. I'm not a big laptop guy.
That looks like Colorado.
Your screen.
It does, it looks like A basin.
Your
Yeah, A Basin or Loveland, one of those two,
Yep.
right?
So you
Yep.
have to go down to multiple.
My favorite mountain.
I love Loveland. That's one of my
Amanda, can you
favorites.
try to share your screen one more time?
Okay, share one time. I got it.
See if that
Let's
works.
see. Nope, still says disabled.
So you know
What
what?
is the advanced
I got
sharing?
you. I got you. I'm gonna make her the host.
Oh,
Amanda, so I'm gonna make you host, and then when you're done, before you log off, you have to get.
I have to give you it back, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
what was that again? Okay, never mind.
Okay, so that should work.
Okay,
All right,
it should work now.
it should. There we go.
Okay.
Are you seeing the
Yep.
the lake? See the lake? Okay, good. All right.
All view of the lake is the front page of your PowerPoint.
Okay, good. So Ned, do you want me to just jump in, or do you want to
I'll
say anything or?
just add a couple of things. Just, I think all the board members and everyone here knows that the reason we're proposing a stormwater utility is to pay for the MS-12 obligations we have under the flow restoration plan for Stevensbrook and for Rugbrook. In total, it's about $5 million with some amount of inflation between now and 2036. And stormwater utility is the easiest and the fairest and the most equitable way to pay for it. And Amanda, I'm going to hand it off to you.
All righty, sounds good. So point is really just designed to summarize the work with the commission and how we came to the ultimate basis for the rate units for the stormwater utility as well as edits to the ordinance. So the first slide is just a summary of the goals when we were brought onto the project. It's really to help you develop a method and it means a method to build a town and build the community rate units to support all of the future, current and future stormwater infrastructure improvements. So that's everything from your culvert work, road ditching, your municipal drainage, but also your flow restoration plans, as well as your phosphorus control planning. So there's significant costs that are associated with that. So let's look at, so the first step was really to review the draft stormwater ordinance that Ned had provided and provide comments based upon essentially all the next tasks that we were assigned to develop. So really, while this is the first task, it really ends up being the last task in our scope of work, because to go through all the effort to identify the number of communities, the amount of impervious surface, the commercial properties, and develop a rate for each residential property and what it would mean for commercial before we could even edit the stormwater ordinance. So we reviewed the draft ordinance and we compared it with numerous other communities to see how they crafted their ordinances and suggested edits based upon that, and had discussions with the planning commission to decide which edits would be most appropriate for the town. So a number of edits we added included definitions in upfront sections of the ordinance. We also, one of the benefits of having the ordinance is that it gives the select board the ability to update the billing rates and the number of total parcels that are incorporated into the structures on a periodic basis. So the way it's written into the ordinance is that a single family residence is 1 ERU. And so that's your method of billing your residents. And the select board has the authority to set and modify those user fee rates. And you can do it annually, you can do it biannually. There's a number of methods that you can do it based upon what projects you have in the future and what funds you will need to appropriate for those projects. The non-single family resident, so that would be your commercial, industrial properties, that is essentially computed by taking the total impervious surface of that specific lot and dividing it by the single family resident square footage. And I'll get to how we got to the 3,500 in subsequent slides. The ordinance also provides a stormwater reserve fund. So think of this as a sinking fund. So if your money is not spent, that the money that you receive from your billing for the stormwater utility is not spent, and it essentially is stockpiled in a sinking fund that can be spent for the next coming fiscal year or years after. So the ordinance allows for the creation of a reserve fund. So what goes into your costs? So that was one of the first steps Ned and I worked on. He provided a number of estimates based upon an administration, based upon like a full-time employee, a percentage of their time going towards administration, general maintenance, all these kind of numbers used in generating the actual expenditures by the town. So how many culverts do you plan to replace in the next year, in the next 2, next 5, all the way up to 5 years, looking at how much road ditching you would need to do, how much street sweeping, drainage system repairs, all of those items we for the next 5 years, we looked at and were able to compile into your number. So here's a summary of exactly what I was just talking about. Sorry, I should have switched the slide. Salaries, benefits, equipment, permitting, street sweeping, all of these we had to evaluate, because that's really what you're going to be needing this utility to fund, is all these expenditures. So when we look, here's a summary. Let me know when this comes up. It's like an Excel spreadsheet. I want to make sure my internet is keeping up with my speaker. Okay, good. Good. Yeah, I live all the way down in Huntington and at the end of a dirt road, so my internet's not very good. So
occasionally your voice goes in and out, so I might have to repeat, but so far it's been okay.
Okay, and I'll go slower too, so that if there is a need for repeating. So here's your fiscal years 21 to 25, and here's a summary of all the expenditures that we developed over a series of months, looking at assumptions for, and a lot of these are assumptions because you may not have necessarily hired that person, the administration, to handle the utility. So all of this is estimates for moving forward. How much water quality monitoring, permitting fees, so staffing, the salaries, benefits, if you're going to need vehicles, all of these. And the Planning Commission and Ned have this Excel spreadsheet so they can tweak these numbers to look at, to see how their expenditures fall out. But this was really the first step in developing how many, what the billing rate would be for each member of the community. So looking at
Ned has just one comment.
I just want to mention to the board that this is based on prior experience in other communities in our area who have existing stormwater utilities and have had them for several years. So these are not just from thin air. These are experience from other places.
Yeah.
And some of the other things like the engineering cost and the street sweeping and other costs are our own, some of our own little local experiences. And so we've adjusted some of them up or down a little bit to more accurately reflect local information and local experience when we have that information available.
Correct. Yes. So as you can see, you're looking on an annual basis of about a $250,000. So you're looking at 223, and then we have it increasing 2% each year. Just with looking, yeah. So 223 is our base, and that can be adjusted based upon actual expenditures. And then capital projects for your flow restoration planning and your phosphorus control plans are separate. We wanted to keep your maintenance expenditures separate from what your capital projects were going to be. So from that, we can then help determine your equivalent residential units. So this is how you are, how you bill the community members. And so this is going to be, it's developing a rate structure for how much of impervious surface they have for their property. So our approach, so Ned provided us with commercial industrial lots in the town, and there was about 50, I think it was more than 50 lots that he actually provided. And he gave us the percent cover impervious surface within each of those lots. But we also wanted to take, I think based upon our first meeting, was to really look at, okay, what, instead of us making an assumption over what a residential impervious lot is, we went back to the actual raw data from Vermont Impervious Surfaces for the basin and used the 2011 aerial photography that then identified impervious surfaces for residential parcels. So we were able to actually look at the specific square footage in the town for a residential lot, because that's really what we need to start with before we look at your total billing for the commercial. We need to look at the residential first. So we looked at, I think the total number of properties that were in this database was just over 1,400, 1,455 parcels. Probably about a dozen were on the high end, over 10,000 square feet of impervious surface. So that's why the tail is so far to the right. But you can see that the mean is about 3,200 square feet, whereas the median is slightly less. And based upon this curve, really mean is a fair number to go with for applying your applying your ERU, your residential unit rate. So using 3,200, you know, we actually rounded up to 3,500 because this is old data. So this is from 2011, and we are missing some parcels within this data set. So conservatively assuming that your average residential parcel has about 3,500 square feet on that specific lot. So then moving forward, you have in the town, there are 1,532 parcels. I think that's what we had from the 2017 tax parcel data set. So one residential parcel equals one ERU, period. Then from there, we can then determine what your number of commercial parcels are. And that was 136 per Ned's data set. And also from this is from the city, I think this is from also the Vermont data set, and so it includes commercial, industrial, agricultural, religious, civic, and recreation. So applying the average of 3,500 square feet of a residential impervious surface, we take that, we apply it to the commercials, and you're looking at about a 28 to 72%. So 28% of your total ERUs comes from your residential property owners, whereas 72% come from your commercial, industrial, agriculture, etc. And we also looked at these numbers versus the median. And so there was a little bit more of extreme with the median. Based upon our planning commission meetings, we decided to go with the mean, the average, for moving forward with developing the stormwater ordinance. Ned, do you want to comment on that at all?
No, that's, you're going good. Keep going.
Okay. So here's also for the breakdown financially, what these total ERUs and the billing rate for each ERU based upon the mean versus the median. So again, the mean is your average. So you're looking at fiscal year 21 based upon your total showed previously on those slides, and as well as the capital projects. You're looking at about an annual rate of $68.13 per residential property. And then depending on how many acres, how many square feet of impervious surface you have from a commercial perspective, you would then be assessed a specific number of ERUs, and then that would multiply. So if you have 2 ERUs, you'd have twice the 68.13. So for a residential property, the annual billing rate would be $68.13. And the bottom half is more comparison for the median. So that's on the lower square footage. And that's where you have more extreme, that the commercial industrial properties are paying more for the stormwater utility as compared to the residential property. Communities that have implemented stormwater ordinances, South Burlington, Williston, Burlington, Colchester. Shelburne has not adopted the stormwater ordinance as of yet. I think they were planning on doing it sometime this summer, fall. I hadn't seen any updates on if they've adopted it yet as to date. So looking at our average 3,500 square feet, the annual billing rate of $68.13, you can see you fall in actually in the lower, like actually right in the middle of the stormwater ordinances that are currently in place.
Can I jump in here, Amanda?
Yes.
If we make this, say we make this the ERU number to 3,500, slightly larger, we transfer some of the burden onto residential properties, whereas if we make it smaller, that'll put more of the burden on the commercial properties. Okay? So that's why we ended up rounding up that extra amount, so it made it really fair to all types of land uses throughout the community.
So yes, that's a good point, because independent of your square footage for a residential property, they will be the same exact, independently if they have twice or 3 times as the square footage of, if they have 10,000 square feet, they would still pay 1 ERU because we're going with the average. It's the commercial industrial properties, that anything that's not designated residential will have to pay more for their.
Can I jump in here real quick?
Sure. Sure.
Stan called me a while back and asked me about, we had a thing in there on residential properties that had 1 acre or more of impervious surface. And the planning commission has since, after discussing it and kicking around, decided just to eliminate that from the ordinance.
From the ordinance, okay.
Ordinance completely, because we only had about 90 properties out of the 1,455 properties that had more 7,000 or more square feet of impervious surface. And when all of those properties, all 90 of them were multi-acre properties, mostly from 3 acres up to hundreds of acres. And the percent of coverage ended up to be, if you have 3,500 square feet and you have 1 acre, you're covering approximately 8% of your property with impervious surface.
Right.
You have 10,000 square feet of impervious surface. That would be the same level of, the same 8% for 3 acres. So if you have 7,000 square feet or 10,000 square feet and you have 5 acres, your volume of impervious surface per your lot area is lower than like some more suburban style areas of town. So it ends up being, being fair to allow those. I don't want to say those people are getting away with murder, but it means more fair, because if, let's just say you had 10,000 square feet and you had 5 acres, if it's running off your driveway up by your garage, that's running into a field, into a ditch, and never making it to the stormwater system. So it's a fair system just to say, if you have a residential dwelling, one dwelling up there, you get charged the same amount as me in a neighborhood that we get charged. So it ends up, because your impact on the stormwater system is the same, potentially even slightly less than me in a more suburban, 1 acre parcel sort of a thing.
Right.
Back to you, Amanda.
Right. So I wanted to kind of take this back to where the first task, which was the draft ordinance. So this was the revisions that we had to the ordinance. And so for 1 ERU is equivalent to 3,500 square feet. That determines the billing of the $68 per year. And then a non-single family residence, so that's your commercial, industrial, agriculture, they take the total impervious surface on their lot and they divide it by 1 ERU, which is the 3,500 square feet. And that will tell them how many ERUs they would get billed. And I think, Ned, do you recall what was it an annual billing rate is what was we all decided upon, everyone decided upon annual billing rate? Yeah. Okay. Right.
And if you go back to the budget for a second, your slide 13, Amanda.
There we go.
There you go. Oh, okay.
I don't know if you can see it. It's so small.
How about?
Do you want me to go to the smaller one? The
smaller one.
Let's do the summary. Yeah, the summary one. Yeah. Okay. Right. So so this is the $68, or it was a monthly rate of $5.68 a month. So
let me jump in here, Amanda, because the planning commission recommended a going with the median, and recommended a $65 rate. It would end up just out here. The reason we suggested the $65 rate is so that we had several years of a stable fee as the utility started to get off its feet and get going, so that it did not do, it's 56 and then 57, just sort of that sort of annoying escalation. So let's just jump to 65. That gives us 3 or 4 years of nice stable payments of a fee, and then we'll see where things are going at that point and move forward with whether it requires an increase or we can continue, because we have a certain amount of reserve for several more years.
And we did make some assumptions on for revenue, that we would have a 25% match with stormwater grants to help fund the capital projects.
Is that the end of the presentation?
Yes, that's the
Alright.
summary of the.
I have a point to make.
Okay.
We're forming a utility because we do not have the capacity to equitably bill and service our stormwater utility system, our stormwater systems that are in place. We have developments all over town that are out of requirement with their state permit, they're in pending status, or they're totally non-compliant. We're trying to, basically, we're acting as what we are. We are an organization that does the stuff the state does not want to do. That's the only reason. We are a little incorporated entity that does the things the state doesn't want to do. So if we're gonna start sending everybody a bill on top of their tax bill for $65 a house or more, and raise the cost of living or owning a business in St. Albans Town, that's gotta be to the point where we are paying new staff members to handle things that current staff members are already at capacity. We know that. We have a problem with staff time. Everybody's stretched thin. So that's why on page 16, section D, it basically says that the zoning administrator and director of public works are gonna handle all new construction activities. Like, Alan's got enough going on. He's already overworked with stormwater stuff, and Becky and AJ they're going like crazy.
I think it says after that, or their designee, because in a lot of those places it said, or their designee.
Well, it's, I don't know that I can get behind that. And we've got a 31-page ordinance. We've got two exemptions. I mean, it's well thought out. I will say that. The permitting process, I mean, the closer you are to the impaired watersheds, the higher the scrutiny is for permitting. That makes sense.
So I will tell you also that we did ask Dan O'Rourke, our lawyer, to review the ordinance. We asked him a little while ago. He got back to me today that he was reviewing it for, just to be clear, he said enforceability and compliance, not necessarily to tell us or you what you should do for policy, but this worked. The only comment he had was adding a 24 VSA chapter 59, or sorry, put my readers on, yep, 59 section reference to it under section 1. So he didn't have an issue with it. What triggered my memory when you said that, Brendan, was this is, I don't know what percentage, but a large percentage of this is similar to Colchester's. And they've been using it for a decade or more. And I don't know exactly how many years it's working. Not a decade. Colchester is one of the latter ones. Some of the other communities have been involved in MS4.
Well, here's an Alan and Ned question. I asked both the same things to each of you say. We're going to start billing people $65 on year 1. I get the point of not wanting to feel like we're nickel and diming every year by going up and up and up. But do we need the personnel and resources that this budget is based on year 1? Or should that $65 be $35 for the first 5 years under the expectation that it will double over time? I mean, I don't want to, we are a nonprofit. We should not be billing people and collecting hundreds of thousands of dollars that we do not need to sit in an account waiting for, I don't know.
But we're out of, I mean, to be blunt, we're out of stormwater money. And we've been doing some grant work, including some requirements, right? And last year at budget time, you'll probably recall that our stormwater budget was severely cut, and so we still have these $30,000 or $40,000 of the minimum payments we have to make every year, on top of a stormwater project a year for certain neighborhoods you just mentioned. So I think we do need something close to that because we have expenses already that are incurring. And I'm a little concerned. I'm starting to get uncomfortable that I won't be able to pay all of those bills, or we'll have to stop. We'll have to stop any and all forward progress on stormwater until we figure this out.
And I want to, we don't want to develop a big reserve. We want to get the reserve. On day 1, we will probably need, or not day 1, but several months down the line, we'll need a bot to administer this, to take care of, to make sure the money's collected and where it's going, and start applying for the grants. That's one of the key things that the state's been asking us for is, where's your money? And they want to know, like, it's in this account, here's how much, and we're putting it aside for that. And they're checking. They've emailed me 2-3 times.
Maybe our response as an elected body needs to be, where's your money?
Yeah, but hang on. But they're asking multiple times, not because they're worried it's not there, and they're making sure. Like Ned's last email said, here. If his next email doesn't say that, they're giving people a hard time.
I tell you, I have a hard time sending people a bill to talk about water flow and sediment control, and the fact that our main pollutant that we're talking about in these two watersheds is volumes of water and not actual pollutants. Meanwhile, our biggest potential economic driver we have, that bay, looks the way it does, and the state has the gall to send us these unfunded mandates, and they don't do a damn thing for that water out there when we've got private people making multi-million-dollar investments, and those investments are covered with algae the first 20 feet, 30 feet offshore, and we're doing absolutely nothing. They give us $60 million. Beth Pierce finds it. We invite the governor. We have a great ceremonial signing on the shores. When the bay smelled, when it wasn't probably safe to swim, there were people running around trying to take water samples to close us down that very moment when he was signing that, and we've got nothing. We've got nothing. And we get these unfunded mandates, have to come up with 31-page ordinances and spend $223,000 a year when our total operating budget to provide police, fire, ambulance, and public works is $5 million a year. It's nonsense. So how do we get that message across to the state? Because I don't feel comfortable spending another nickel until they know that we're PO'd. I mean, this is unacceptable. They don't do anything with their waters, and we're expected to go invest hundreds of thousands of dollars a year so we don't dump additional water, just water, and they allow how many people downstream to dump millions of gallons of partially treated whatever, effluents, every time we get a rain event? And they want me to charge taxpayers who are already overpaying and already overburdened additional dollars every year to control additional water flow. It just boggles my mind. I'm sorry, but anybody want to say anything or not? It ticks me off to see somebody make that kind of an investment in a marina, and to see us try to do what we're doing with the parks, and then these unfunded mandates, and we get nothing. Sorry. And Alan, did you have a?
I believe the utility is important for the town. A lot of the ditch work and stuff like that is stuff that I've gone after better back roads. The state has given us grants. It's just tough. We got, the state has a plan with all DPWs to change out their culverts in the next 20 years. That's 15 cross culverts a year that I have to do. We're doing it, but it is all part of stormwater. You increase the size of your culverts, it slows down the volume heading to the lake. You put in check dams, you do your splash guards and stuff. I believe this will help the town down the road. I don't think you're going to be able to put the personnel on in the first couple of years. I think you got to get this established, bank the money. Public Works is overseeing this stuff anyways. Your big money comes into your retention ponds, and that's a huge, huge expense. And a lot of them are in developments that haven't been taken care of, and we're trying to get the town up to date on those. I believe this can work. It's just, I don't think we can jump into it and have 2-3 personnel for the first 2-3 years. I think you need to bank the money.
You've got, in this budget, you've got $80,000 on year one for culverts. So if we're in the Department of Public Works, there's got to be a culvert line item.
So 17 or 18,000.
Yeah, 20 grand. 20 grand this year. Does that get to come out? Is the general fund expense going to come down if this gets approved?
Some of it might, but we don't have a number for you yet.
That might, I mean,
So
that
that's
would be-
that's a fair statement, and I thought about that, but I didn't have a number yet.
we could say
There's
that.
an assume, I can chip in.
So-
Amanda, there is an
Yeah.
assume, which is
Yeah, so
W to stormwater.
some of the total number, so for instance, over the next 5 years, the estimate for the total number of culverts over the next 5 years was going to be 40 culverts total. So instead of doing 0 in 2021, 4 in 22, 8, 12, 16, which then you would see we evened it out over each of the years, because if you increased your culverts like $10,000 per culvert, your fee would just skyrocket, and your fee wouldn't slowly increase over time. It would dramatically increase over time, and I think that would be viewed very unfavorably.
But there's,
How much?
there's a key thing that Amanda says, there's a transition of 2, then 4, then 8, then so you're
Well,
taking that
the
15.
culvert replacements of $80,000. Is there like some capital budget? Because if we're spending $20,000 a year now and doing 15 cross culverts, are we banking for like part of that, the bridge? Do we have box culverts we've identified? Like, why are we going from 20 to 80 on day one?
The CIP does have box culverts in it and
Okay.
does have,
So we're saving
small
for
amount of
things
bridge.
that are going to be
Yeah.
more, and it's going to be the
Yeah.
funds will go up and down, and okay, that
yeah,
makes
it's gonna
sense.
come, some of that is gonna come from general fund budget line items, transitioning over years from like me, but moving to the utility because they're all part of stormwater. And they need to be controlled by one entity that's.
Well, there are things in here that are already in that budget. Right?
Alan, do we have you looked at any of this?
I actually just saw it tonight.
You had it tonight, so you haven't really had a chance to look at it. Because there's a lot of capital expenditures, street sweeper. You're gonna have an excavator, one excavator is gonna be enough to do your work plus.
That's the thing down there. That's why I'm saying it's gonna be a 2 or 3 year process. You're gonna have to bank money before you put staffing on. And
But we gotta
equipment,
establish a
because
capital fund to get that equipment before we can do it.
And that's why you start with the $65.
That's why you want to start with
Yeah,
65 bucks. So now that's
You
Yeah,
also gotta remember
fair
when we talk
explanation.
culverts. I'm already doing a state plan. I have to change 15 culverts a year
Yeah.
to stay on my 20-year plan. But a lot of this stormwater stuff is other culverts.
so this isn't just what you're doing.
It's not just cross culverts. I mean, you get in the industrial part, you got a long stretch of culverts that go down to the retention pond that need to be upgraded. If you talk Tanglewood, from Tanglewood's retention, that goes all the way across the whole underneath 2 properties. There's probably 300 feet of culvert that goes from the overflow of that retention pond over to the brook. So, and that's a huge expense. You're crossing 2 community roads plus underneath the property. So that 80,000 that's in this plan would cover that culverts. In the budget I have, I'm
They're
trying to
totally
maintain
separate
doing
things.
road culverts.
These are totally separate.
It's totally separate. I mean, it's a bigger picture than a lot of us realize until you really get out there and start walking the town and seeing it all.
So we gotta have a plan in place, Alan, that's all I'm saying, with your capital.
Yeah,
Equipment.
I agree with that, Stan, and that's why I think for the first 2-3 years, the Public Works is gonna have to maintain and get some of these projects done until you get a little bit of a base in there, so you can start establishing equipment and personnel.
Alan and I were just talking about this. We were over at the industrial park pond and we were talking about the brush hogs, walk behinds. Alan was buying one. Now the stormwater utility, okay, you could say 2 or 3 and some weed whackers and people that are shared, like during the summertime, they do stormwater utility work. During the wintertime, they plow roads. There's going to be a mix of people and a mix of things, but you start getting into the little things, you start getting into some.
Well, the point is, we got a plan for that mix. If we don't have a plan, it's not gonna happen.
Well, I think it's much like our CIP. We can have a plan, but it can be flexible that each year the select board and the staff look at what they need for equipment and personnel. And maybe that year it's nothing, and then 2 years
Right,
later,
but we
it's-
have money put away for that, right?
we have some of the monies coming from the infrastructure
We always
development.
had for equipment funding.
But I mean, that plan is built 5 years in advance and it's fluid and flexible.
So then we can't do a lot of this work in the plan. We ought to be doing minimum for 4 or 5 years, then start into stormwater.
Yeah,
per
maybe,
se.
I'd like to be able to tell people we're sending you a bill for 2 years and we're not doing anything with the money because we need to go buy a bunch of stuff. I'd love to be able to explain that, because if they get the bill, the first question is gonna be, well, what the heck are you gonna do with it?
Right.
There's still gonna be stormwater work being done.
And
Yeah.
Al Vogel just had a comment via chat that the stormwater fund is an enterprise fund and therefore should be seen as a business, trying to think of it as an investment dollar and to get it off the ground. So, thank you.
So
Alan.
what's the max that we had ever put in the general fund at one point or another for stormwater? Do you remember?
100?
150 grand, is that the top? So we're talking about stormwater fees at $323,000 on year 1, and on year 10 it's 412. So we're talking more than double where we've been.
Yeah, triple.
I mean, that's,
We've got some.
I'm not trying to be critical, I'm just saying, we're talking about spending twice as much money as we've ever spent before.
But then, I mean, that's a little bit like apples and oranges. Without the utility, you're all the weight of those expenses are on the general fund property owners. This is a broader tax. It includes, it's not a good word, I don't like it myself, but it's a much lower fee per parcel because it includes nonprofits and hospitals and schools and everyone who gets water that falls on their property.
Well, I mean, to an
It's
extent,
affected.
I get that, but to an extent, whatever the school district pays us is all gonna be divided between the city of Fairfield and us, and we're gonna pay that.
Mhm. And right
And
now, it wasn't divided at all. It was just on the taxpayers.
Well, then, yeah, so that helps, but if you're talking a third of, we're saving 2/3 of that chunk, and then the hospital, we'll figure out a way to get it back out of patients. I mean, we're still talking about spending twice as much money as we've ever spent before. And I mean, if that's where we're headed, then we've got to get more done than what we've done in the last couple of years is all. Like, if we're gonna do this, I get needing a couple of years to bank it, but in year 3, we're gonna have to roll it all out, like, go,
Yes.
let's go.
Yes.
Mhm.
It can't be like, Alan?
I think it's important that taxpayers know that last year we got 3 retention ponds redone.
Yeah.
2 of them the public works did by themselves. The third one was redesigned and all engineered and put in, and that was contracted with grant money. So in 1 year's time, we did our culvert replacements, we did 3 retention ponds, and we're keeping them maintained. On top of getting these projects done, we gotta have a maintenance plan, and we're keeping them maintained and keeping them clean once we get them fixed to where they should be.
So this is
So-
taking what you're doing, and are we gonna, like, what
I mean,
should
it's
we
important for
expect out of this?
taxpayers to know that. I don't think they realize that a lot of this work is being done, but it's draining because you don't have the manpower or the funds to get it done. So
So we need
with
to-
the budget we have, we're doing the best means we can, but the state with their laws and everything, we got to try keeping up so we don't fall behind.
And I want to make a point too is that by putting effort towards your design and getting a couple of your projects designed, you can go after more grant funding to support those larger projects.
So we have, the town manager's budget has $25,000 for engineering or consulting. This plan has 40,000. What
And
if-
that's based upon your capital projects that you have
That's-
to achieve
we're
by a
gonna
certain
spend-
date. Yeah.
We're gonna
Yeah.
spend that much.
Mhm.
That's a lot of money. on
Because the
engineering.
20-year plan included some conceptual plans, but it didn't have any construction plans for these projects that we want to.
So they're literally making us design stuff that they don't know if they're ever gonna want us to build and to pay for it.
Oh, that's not
Oh,
true.
no.
That's not
So if we're
accurate.
talking conceptual, we don't know if we wanna.
But the part about they don't know what we need and why we're doing it is inaccurate. I mean, we do know why we need it. We have flow restoration plans that prioritize and explain the need. So I don't dispute the need. I've seen it work and we've seen what we've done so far. That's pretty successful.
Yeah.
I agree with you that I don't love that the state has tossed this over to our level because people can find us at our offices. They don't know how to and can't complain at the state level, but we do need to address it. I think this is the fairest way to do it. It's not fun. I know that, but we do need the work. We need
It's
it.
just something to be critical about. It's literally, I mean, how
Absolutely.
many decisions do you
Yep.
make that it raises the cost of living $5 a month?
Oh, well,
For everyone.
mhm.
Like, how many decisions do you, like,
I know.
I gotta be, I don't mean to be overly critical, but.
I don't know how much more time you can spend on this topic though,
No.
because we do have some other things
Yeah,
to cover.
so,
I don't want to short it. but-
Anybody, Jonathan, what do you have anything?
I have a little bit to say, not a lot. You kind of hit on my points I really wanted to say. I mean, if a portion of this is phosphorus control, I mean, every time the city has their combined sewer overflows, that overflow into Stevens Brook and stuff, I think this is kind of, and I'm a taxpayer, but I really don't want to pay $65 to clean up a waterway that every time we get 3 inches of rain, we just dirty it. I mean, I don't know if it's our level that can get after the city for, those uncontrolled spills, or if it's the state, or if it's the feds.
Let me just say one thing. I'm a town resident myself, and when you go into a flash flood, the city isn't dumping the sewage from the sewer plant. I don't think people understand that. When that happens in Burlington and like the other day, they said their backup generator didn't kick on. They dumped a bunch of sewage. That's totally different than what's happening here. They're changing a lot of their storm system that is collected in their sewer system. So there are certain manholes in the city that overflow in a flash flood. That does go into the brook, but it's diluted with rainwater. So this difference between the city and the town, I'm kind of defending the city right now because I worked there before, but it's not the sewer plant dumping raw sewage. It's when you go into a storm effect, it overflows and some of the sewage is just distributed into the brook.
So there's still sewage in the brook at the end of the day.
It is, but it's totally different than what you read about down south.
Well, they had a control problem that left the valve open last year, the year before, that dumped a few $100,000 down. I mean, I get it. The point he's trying to make is why spend $100,000 a year to clean up a watershed that's gonna have crap dumped in it every time it rains? I don't know that this is an invalid point, but that's the point.
Is that something the city's working on? Are they upgrading or?
They spent $18 million.
They have to go through the same thing as we.
Because remember that what Alan said is when the rain falls on the city, some of that rainwater gets into the sewer system, and they're trying to separate that out. Now they can't just, have some sort of magic thing that's at the end near the sewer plant that says, nope, your rainwater, nope, your sewer. It's got to be all the way back at each individual house, on each individual block, in each individual neighborhood. And it's going to take a fair amount of time because there's literally hundreds of years worth of construction all feeding into the storm, what they said, the storm sewer system.
Jonathan's point is they're releasing partially treated sewage. So
But as they, and I'll defend the city too, as they slowly deal with that across the whole city, it's going to slowly, and hopefully not happen. So,
Well, should we
but it is.
slowly start investing
bay
money
isn't
in this?
getting
Does
any
that start to happen?
no,
There's 3 people talking. I don't understand.
move on.
Yeah, why
so-
don't we go on to something? Jessica,
Can you share the, or return the
We have-
host to me, Amanda?
Yeah, please do. And Jessica?
No, I mean, I think we have to do something. This is our part of it,
Thank
so. I support it.
Okay, so is Carrie the host again?
Yep.
All right. Does anybody have any last minute questions for
For Amanda, before she signs off.
No, it was a good presentation.
Yeah, it was.
Very good.
It was
Thank you,
informative.
Amanda.
Very informative.
Thank you.
We'll send you.
Very good discussion. We had a very good discussion. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you.
Right.
Water allocation from Milk and Maple.
And so you
Yeah, so
decided
that's
not
done.
to do motions.
No. Carrie can record the application and sign the letter that we send and let that.
Okay, then we'll move on. Perfect. The next update was on the town relocation update. We have been having meetings every week with our consultants. Stan and Jonathan have been participating. Matt has been participating. Anna and I. Anna left, but they've been working with us on the space needs floor plan, more or less, and working on some conceptual ideas. Going on, I think, on schedule at this point. It feels like it's pretty much on schedule. But they're going to be working with us to finalize that in the next few weeks so that they can get it to Matt, and Matt will get us a
professional estimate beginning of September. So more towards the middle of September. So Brendan wanted to start talking about public outreach. And I mentioned that to Matt last week. You know, what's our schedule look like, and when will we be getting the final conceptual project and cost estimate to the select board? And we expect that was by the second select board meeting in September.
Now who's a date? Oh, he's such a planner.
Mike. Okay, Mike, we're gonna do it for you. Okay. Yeah, so we gotta figure out.
So we can still set, you know, meet that timeline you had set. I believe the guidelines are end of September is our absolute drop dead date for warning something in November if you wanted to have this vote in November, which was still Matt's recommendation, or if you wanted to, because we could do the outreach in September and October and early November.
Well, a day or two.
Excuse me?
A day or two in November. Yeah. I don't know, it doesn't need much
Yep.
time. And it took our biggest feedback about the pool was we didn't take enough time to explain it and include people. I don't wanna repeat history, how many people specifically told us you rolled this out way too fast, it feels like it was brought out of nowhere, and I'm not voting for it because of that. I had people literally tell me, I support your project, but you rolled it out way too fast, and I'm not voting, like multiple people, so that's why. I don't know, maybe we could look at putting the land or like the location on the ballot in November, and having an element. I don't know. Open for discussion. Anybody?
I think it's too close. I mean, we haven't decided where it's going. We haven't even finalized the design. We haven't came up with a final cost. And we know some numbers, but it's like, we've got a lot of stuff to do. Try to present it during this. I mean, that's another element of, you know, people aren't gonna show up just because, you know, because of COVID.
Yeah.
So I think it should wait till March, but.
Jessica, Stan, anybody have an opinion to add?
I don't have a very strong opinion on this one. I think people probably know more about it than they did the pool because it has been talked about for so many years. But it does seem like a lot of steps would have to be done by September to get it on the ballot.
I have the same sentiments as you. People should know more because it's a longer standing issue. And I think the pushback's gonna be, the proposal isn't gonna be to renovate this building. And I think that needs to adequately be explained, not only why and how this couldn't work. And then you go to selling a new one. I think this discussion about this building and its sentimental value has to happen almost first, before you can get the community to decide, well, it's okay to let go. And I think part of that discussion, honestly, is we should probably try to find we all say that this building will have a use after town hall. And just saying that helps a lot of folks see that we can move out of this building and it'll be okay. But wouldn't it be great to tell them what that might actually be? We had some people approach us about a private-public partnership to turn this building into housing, which is, you know, there's a housing shortage in the area. Or I don't know, that there's a lot of points to discuss, like, because a lot of people are gonna have a lot of questions. I don't think we've been able to, and part of that's the police contract took up a lot of time for 2.5 months. I think we need to devote that serious of an amount of time to the town hall project from the moment we get what we're gonna get in September. And then do that for 2 months and then start selling it right after the first of the year for a March election.
I mean, Jonathan and Stan have been really involved, so I kind of value your opinions pretty clearly on this.
Sitting here weekly, it's getting more and more exciting, to be honest with you, to look at how the project is coming together. But I'm still back with Jonathan. We need to lock up some property. And if you're gonna put it on the ballot, and it's not at the Bay, it's gonna be a little tougher sell. You could probably sell it, but at the Bay is where we wanna be, especially now that we just signed up for the designation of downtown. You know, you're a realtor, and I looked this weekend on property selling down here. It's amazing, amazing. 2 small places over on War Street. One sold for $319,000. Another one right now is for sale. The one for sale is $249,000. That's 1/10 of an acre. We got a chance to buy 5-point-something acres, all with road frontage. And we got Lakeshore. We would be so far ahead to lock it up. Lock it up.
Yeah, I agree. You do need time for people to be able to visualize it and have a good idea what the building will look like before they're willing to go, yes.
Right. And it's, if we can do it. over
And the
next
building
several
looks
months.
good. It's amazing. And I've had people tell me, you should have been out of here 10 years ago. That's the feeling out there. If we could get that on the ballot for November, the land, with the okay to buy the land, that would be a big.
Well, that'll help you sure up your number in March because you'll know exactly what you're budgeting for. It won't be we'll have, yeah, I mean, I think that would be better.
Are you planning anything big in March or put on the ballot other than?
Do we have any?
Other than town hall?
Other than town hall?
I don't believe we have anything large, but we have not,
Everyone looks at
Alan
you.
and I have not talked about anything yet. Don't ask Alan.
Do not ask him.
Well, I'm wondering when we can start pitching big sidewalk projects using the capital plan.
Right.
Can that happen?
Yeah, and we're hoping to have the health path on there because we're finishing a grant right now and then applying for another one for that, so.
I mean,
I just think the way pricing and everything is going up, it's better to have it in November and try getting bids in over the winter. Next spring, prices are gonna be a lot higher than they are right now for building. I'm already seeing increases on everything.
Right now, Alan, I think material is very difficult to come by. It is, and labor.
well, the material markets are all the supply chain, right? I mean, they told us to expect it back when we all went back to work, in the beginning of May, they said, expect it. When the bunkers all run out, you're done. Like it's gonna come, and then you walk into Lowe's, and there's 1 2x4 in a pressure treated aisle, and it's $20. Eventually, you think it would come back up. I mean, we have the most resilient and complicated and bulletproof supply chain in the world. If anybody's gonna be able to figure this out over the winter, it'd be the U.S. of A. So I don't know. Alan's point valid though. It's unprecedented. It's once in a generation. We don't know how it'll affect the market 6 months later. No clue. We've got to figure out a decision. Maybe we kick this can down the road one more time to when Erin can be here and give a perspective. As the chair of the planning commission, she might have a viewpoint that we haven't considered, but
When we meet again, it's September 9th. That's gonna be the night. There can be no more kicking. It would have to be.
yeah,
It
we're
would
gonna
have
have
to
to
be that
come
ready.
ready.
We'll have a better feel too.
We will have a better feel, and maybe you'll have a better comfort level at that point, but,
There is a conceptual drawing then of the building already done.
there is, they actually did some research about what was important to our area. Things like the stone house, the conservation core, that we're a rail city, that we're near the lake. They took a lot into consideration of having some natural elements both in the entryway and making this building that really is a 1-story office building look very, very attractive.
Yeah, really would like to know the location so they could do the
Yes.
groundwork. To
Well,
really, when they go to the public, to say, this is what it's gonna look like.
To customize it a little more
Yeah.
to the site.
Right now, the groundwork's generic.
we should at least consider putting the, well, in order to put the land on the ballot, we've got to get a number. And we're in the process of figuring out what that number might be. So we need to talk
Well-
about that tonight in executive session.
My concern is, when I'm looking online, I see a lot of property selling it for a lot more money than what we have it assessed for. And if we don't go with a purchase and sales agreement to lock that property up, it could be sold out from under us. But, because we have no understanding now at all. And if we miss out there, then we've got to go, and there's no other place that's got that much acreage in this area.
So in November, could you put the land and the building as one ballot item, or does it have to be separate?
We could do it all together.
We're trying to get everything ready to do it all as one vote. But it doesn't erase some of the concerns you had stated. But I think it can be done. A lot of municipalities do that conceptual design. Matt is going to get us that budget, but there's a lot of work that has to be done in the next 4 weeks. A lot. We can do it, but I think right now we can still do it.
What happens if there's a seasonal effect with what we've got going on with the virus? What happens if we start noticing some supply chain stuff and some stuff starts to close down in the winter months and people are more cooped up inside? I mean, I don't know. I
What
just,
happens,
I like the idea of
how does
getting
that
through one.
relate to the cost estimate?
I would like to get through one more winter, to be
I
honest.
see, okay.
I'd like to get to the point where we know there's a vaccine coming out of clinical into production, and then we can start talking about this is how we hire. I would put it right in there. We hire local people, local firms only. Then it started to restart, rebuild, re-energize the economy. But I don't. If we ask the question in November, it might be weighed differently. I don't know. I just.
If we ask the question in November, the plan though is to get construction plans and all the permitting done at that time and go out to bid later in the winter once we have the construction plan.
I'm not talking about it as administering it. I'm talking about voting for it. Like,
The
to
vote.
the average person to vote.
Okay.
That's what, I'm not worried about us having the ability to tactfully ready a proposal and then implement it. I think we could do that, no problem.
Mhm.
It's just that the average voter in town, are they gonna share that perspective when they might be worried about whether or not their place of employment is gonna be able to keep them on payroll? I mean, I don't know. I don't
Right.
know.
Right.
I spent 6 weeks at home. I don't know. I bet a lot of people did. I don't know. That's my only caution. It's more about the public outreach and where the psyche is at with the electorate, especially heading into probably the most divisive general election. I thought we did it in 16, but this looks like it might be the most divisive general election in history. I don't know. There's all kinds of factors.
So you don't want to make it, you want to discuss this again on the 9th?
And I think by the 9th, then the committee can give a really strong suggestion
Yeah.
too.
I think at the end of the day, we gotta go with what the committee says.
Can we lock the property up somewhat?
Well, either, if the recommendation is go for just the land and not the building, that's an acceptable recommendation.
So we get a purchase and sales agreement.
I mean, I didn't want to help support starting that subcommittee without saying that we would empower their decisions. I'm not gonna start fighting. If you guys have a strong recommendation to do everything in one shot in November, then we'll do it and we'll get behind it and we'll sell it as hard as we can. I think it's whatever you guys come up with, that's what I'm gonna back, but that's just my 10 cents. Heck of a lot more than 2.
Think purchase
Yeah,
and sales
no,
agreement?
I agree. I would take the recommendation of the committee. You guys are right there talking about it every week and have all the information.
But there's only 2 select board people, so we couldn't,
Right.
we can't.
Well, you can, as a subcommittee, the way this works really well in a lot of places is the subcommittee makes that recommendation to the select board. And, as a board, then you do discuss, just like you did tonight, the merits of that recommendation. It's not binding, but it's certainly still a recommendation.
I mean, we're not saying, you know, we're gonna do something right now, so whatever you say in the future is law. We're
I'm saying the way property is selling right now, it's amazing.
I mean, we've got the landowner here, and I don't know that, I mean, I'd like to figure out a way to have a conversation with her at a board level in the future, maybe in person, talk about this, but I don't have that. If we're talking, we need a couple weeks to figure out exactly what we want to do, and we all have the general consensus that the land might need to go before the building, and the land has to be on the ballot one way or another in November. I don't think that that person would move that on us without ample warning. I get that there's time is of the essence, like everything else, but
We could probably definitely do the land in November.
Yeah,
just
and
if
then
we
it
wanted
shows-
to vote.
and then it'll make our budget more accurate. It's whether or not we want to do both. We can pay cash for the land out of the infrastructure fund. We could have done that a year ago.
Yep.
So it's an easier question. I mean, we're not taking a bond out until spring if we go that route.
We were not likely gonna take a bond out anyway.
Well, tax anticipation,
Okay, just the word bond sounds.
like that structure.
Yes.
I mean,
Yep.
it gives, I kind of like the idea of splitting them, but I don't know. Anyway,
They've had some work done over there. We have any results, Carrie?
Just the preliminary, and Matt, it's very vague, it's quite vague, so Matt did send it to me, but I didn't forward it, because it's just basically saying the real meat of what we're analyzing is gonna happen in phase 2.
That they had we had a backhoe there.
Yep,
It's
and they
pretty
worked with,
straightforward, looking at the soil, if it's suitable.
Mhm.
Was it suitable for a septic area, Al?
They
The
didn't-
preliminary they told me was it's best fit for whatever was occupied there in the past for occupancy.
that's all they said. So that's not any type of a determination. It's just something that somebody said in the field, and we'll get a report. So they're vague with us, and we should get more in a week or two.
Usually they can tell right off, you know.
And then trying to get an engineer to make a determination in
Come
the
on.
field. I don't know.
You've had soil testing, you know, what it's like
Well,
they don't, boom, boom, boom.
I've stood over a few pits, yeah. No, I'm more worried about the contaminants than anything.
I am too, but
Yeah.
we've had some work done. I was just curious about
Right,
that.
yeah, I don't blame you, it's a good question. So do we want to go to the salt shed update?
yes, salt shed update, we did award the salt shed bid to Connor Contracting. I'm not sure if we had made that announcement since our last meeting. Contract was signed, I did handle the appeal with notifying the state and Matt, and that bidder that was unhappy with our initial award of the project. We're getting a builder's risk policy as we speak. The permit, we just got authorization for the check today, so that's gonna go to the state, so we're moving with that. And they did have a kickoff meeting on the 10th of August. The challenge right now is that policy requires Buy American, which is specific to and more restrictive than Buy America. And with our supply chain issues, it might affect their schedule a little bit, but right now we're pushing forward as fast as we can. So people might start seeing things move over there. Certainly we're working with, working with Connor to get this done as soon as possible. That's it for that one.
The funding side of it, are we still working on that?
We resolved that at the last meeting.
Yeah.
What would we be working
We're
on?
gonna clean up the reserves, just wanted to see it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, we have some reserve funds that will cover an overage. It is what it is.
Some reserve funds, some impact fees, and the capital project
Okay.
fund
Yeah, just
itself.
in case
So no
anything-
tax funds, just
No
strictly.
taxes.
Correct, that's correct. No, it's not gonna raise anybody's
The only
tax.
thing we're paying from is we're gonna pay for paving out of the general fund pavement line, so no, we're gonna take that out of the infrastructure fund, we're gonna do it as part of the contract. How did we decide to do that again?
We're gonna do that another year, the pavement. It's about 60, 70 grand, I thought it was. And then this top coat, we have not,
Does he have it this year? I don't think he's using a lot of money on French Hill.
Yeah.
I don't think, and I believe Alan, when they start, they need to get that asphalt in on the floor and under the overhangs, don't they?
I believe that was the original talk with the engineer. Mike's concerned that because he's gonna have heavy lifts, he doesn't want the heavy lifts on the asphalt because he's gonna have to be bracing the walls, so he's looking at other options to try paving it afterwards.
And the time of year might also affect this.
Well, that's the thing, it's with the way they're trying to get product and everything, it might be late October, early November by the time we could actually get asphalt down, so that might not even happen this fall.
Right, and we can't put salt there without anything in that shed.
No,
I would not.
No, correct, we cannot.
We'll be using the old salt shed.
No, we're not even talking about that actually. But it's just a matter of when the pavement coat can go in.
Well, as soon as we know, can we send some kind of a notification to SASSA? I guess soon, like within a couple of days of us.
I was asked about 2 weeks ago to tell them it was no go at our last meeting. Yeah,
Yeah,
they've already been notified.
I got bugged about it at the golf.
I know, I remember that, but
No.
that, I guess we'd already kind of mentioned that to them.
No, you're right. No.
Or at least to Shane and.
We told the other guy.
All right, so I'm just gonna do a brief COVID update. We did receive our, oops, that's my really great glasses broke. Our shipment of free cloth masks from the state late last week. We have not formally come up with a distribution method. I believe after talking to our public safety officer today, we're going to set up on Monday evenings for about an hour for a number of weeks so people can come in. Bob Cross is taking this very seriously. I mean, we got the masks, and I appreciate that we got free masks, but they were in groups of 5. And so, you know, we only got 25% of our population, so we can't give each person that shows up at these distribution sites 5 masks. So he was separating them in a sterile environment so that we could seal each one and then distribute them individually at this distribution site. And he noticed that there's 3 different models on them, and so he's checking to see if there were any kid-size models sent to us, or if they're all just slightly different codes, and they have actually no real effect on them. These are the masks that we received. They're all white, they look just like this, and they're not really meant for children, but parents, of course, could make modifications if they'd like them. So we are going to start that, but I guess I would just ask the public to be patient with us while we work out the distribution. It will likely be at the fire department. We do not have a start date. So we have to, please wait for that notice. It'll go up on our website and our Facebook page, or you can just call our office. And people have done that. Dozens of people have contacted Bob directly. A couple people have called us directly, and we've distributed a few. Also, I guess I'll just tell you that, I'll remind you that I do sit on the unemployment insurance board for VLCT. As many of you are aware, we have a unemployment insurance pool that all municipalities, or a lot of them, belong to. And we're financially viable at this point. It had a very healthy not trust fund, but a fund balance. And with the new Fed program that's going to reimburse up to 50%, they should stay solvent. So I don't believe that our unemployment insurance rates are going to be too crazy, despite the unprecedented record-setting unemployment rate that obviously we just witnessed over the past 6 months. So as we're getting into budget season, so that kind of stuff is going to become more relevant. I think that's it. Town hall continues to be open by appointment only. And I know last week taxes were due. I appreciate everyone's patience. It's a tough time to do this in a very different way than we've ever done it before. So stay tuned or call us with questions if you have any. This COVID situation is changing pretty rapidly even now. That's all I have for now.
Perfect. So, any questions for Carrie? Okay, so schedule, we've got our regular meetings, we're September 9th, because of Labor Day, we're gonna be on Wednesday, and then Monday, September 21st. Anybody have anything to add to schedule? Okay, so the town fair, VLCT's town fair, usually we send one person to carry a year, at least try to. It's virtual this year, so we all can go, every one of us.
They're still gonna want a voting delegate though, so
We need to, yeah, Carrie, do we need to appoint
not
her?
yet, but that should be coming really soon.
Okay, so September 28th, October 2nd, clear your calendars, and you won't even have to leave your home. Passive, Verb, and VLCT will have virtual annual meetings. There'll be face-to-face roundtable video discussions, so smaller working groups. And they'll have timely topics such as resiliency in COVID-19, equity and diversity, cyber technology, and computer security. So that actually sounds very interesting.
And the keynote speaker on the other side of that brochure is billed as a pretty.
Yeah, so the keynote speaker is the mayor of Union City, Georgia, and that's Vince Williams, Mayor Vince Williams. And I'm not going to read his short biography, but he seems like a very, very impressive candidate, so speaker, so that'd be good. This is probably the most interesting town fair that there will have been, as far as actual topics discussed and not the socializing. But so Alan, I'm going to give you a little bit of news because you were out today, but you still came to our meeting. You sick guy, you're a glutton for punishment. You come here on your day off that you took well in advance. I hope you got to do something fun over the weekend. I talked to Carrie, and then I talked to John Montaigne earlier today. See this mask? This is a sweater that I bought for like $8 at TJ Maxx and had Main Street Graphics embroider for not a lot of money because there's no way as a member of the public to really buy something that has the town's logo on it. So John and I are kind of excited about it, and we're going to loop Alan in tomorrow. But we want to work with Main Street Graphics, local company, to create an online store of St. Albans Town related slogan, like a slogan maybe, like it's always a good day to go to the bay or something like that. You know, we've got in my mind, I've got the Warriors basketball team. They're Bay City. We could be Baytown. We could come up with some cool, interesting, time appropriate things, and we could just put our logo on stuff, and you sell it. And as a nonprofit, we can make somewhere between $5 to $10 an item, and turn around and reinvest that in the park. Now, John had a great idea of adding either free or coin-operated site lookouts. How cool would it be if kids could come literally look for Champ, and worst case scenario, they see a bunch of boats coming in and out of our brand new marina? I mean, it could be cool.
Or ice fishing.
You know, even if we raise $2,000 to $3,000, you know, whether it goes to the Parks Committee and the Parks Committee works on it, or if Alan and John just figure out the best way to make a bunch of little bangs all over the park. Yeah, we just wanted to try to use the fact that we haven't had a mass printing of our logo for public. Which is, you know, there's no retail environment where you can buy something with our logo.
Alan was talking about Champ. Should say something like Home of Champ.
Well, that's
I think
it.
People love that.
So John and I had a conversation about that,
Yeah.
and as it,
No one else has. He's here.
well, John and I had that conversation, and my homework was to contact Main Street Graphics and then talk to Alan in the morning because I wasn't expecting him to be here on his day off. So there's my two things accomplished. Main Street Graphics is more than excited to be on board. And his homework was to research if there's any licensing for Champ. Like, do the lake monsters have some type of a copyright, and do they charge a licensing fee to you know, or is it just if you come up with a certain, so he's researching that, but yeah, that's the thought. You know, we're the home of Champ, this is Champ's Bay. You know, I kind of like calling it Champ's Bay, and then, you know, so we're open to suggestions. We'll circulate the artwork. Don't expect to see anything up within the next 2 to 3 weeks because I guess it's a pretty good process for Main Street Graphics, but it's going to be fun. It's going to be all over social media. If it goes really well, I could see us, you know, maybe investing a little bit of the return money into building a stock to be able to sell, you know, at the marina or, you know, other areas around town. But we're gonna try to make something out of nothing and then turn it into some really cool stuff. So if anybody wants to help out with that, you know, I'm more than happy, but surprise. And that's the only other thing I had was I spent some time at the marina recently, and it's amazing. It's really amazing. They've got the only issue that they really have. There's two things: is their end row of slips wasn't as sturdy or as heavily constructed enough, and in a few storms it's really beaten it. So you're gonna notice that last row is gonna get replaced. I don't know if it's an insurance claim or what, but it didn't look fun. And then when you immediately get off the shore into the actual dock, it's really not pretty because the water's so stagnant there. There are some weeds. I didn't know that if like once a summer, at any point in the year, if it might make good sense to be a good neighbor and go run the weed harvester through. I didn't know if that's something that's like impossible, or if it's something that we could do now. I just question for Alan and Gary, I guess.
Weed harvester only takes weeds off the dirt. You don't run into the water. It won't extract weeds from out of the water. So
The weed rake we have, you mean?
yes.
Yeah, the weed harvester is run by Sawa, not us.
Right. Well, we had that grant. I didn't know if we could like reach out to them.
I'd like to see the weed harvester go away.
Well, that's another point. Is there? But I guess if we're gonna put some serious money into the bay to make it nicer, and we're gonna get the village center designation, which we are. That, you know, as boater traffic picks up in and out of the marina, it'd be terrible if their first impression of getting on land in St. Albans Town was that. I just don't know if there's anything that we can do to help at all.
We have to just be cautious of setting precedent because there's some landowners that would also appreciate that.
Well,
So
I'm
we
sure,
have to
yeah.
just, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that right away.
Well, it's just a topic. I mean,
Yeah.
We talk about being pro-business and we want to support people who build businesses in the town. You know, that there's an opportunity to look to capitalize on.
I do want to support them, but I don't want to create a list that we can't follow through with.
Well, then we'll be creating the weed harvesting utility.
Huh?
So that's all. Does anybody have any other business? Okay, so we're going to head into executive session for legal and contractual. So if somebody would make the.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues where premature general public knowledge of the subject matter would place the town or person involved at a substantial disadvantage. Further move to make a motion to enter into executive session to discuss legal, contractual, or personnel issues under the provisions of Title I, Section 313A1 of Vermont statutes and to invite the town manager.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, so we're gonna move into executive session. Have a good night, Mrs. Brown. Anybody who's watching.